was that Mazda came pulling up out there, and Bobby, Bobby's son, the maintenance guy, he brought up here, and I didn't know who had worked on it. They said Michael had put his timing belts on it, no water pump. And that's fine. I mean, but they said Michael had told him, and he was thinking it was going to overheat, because he was worried about it. I mean, it's an old car, a lot of miles on it, but it was a V6, aluminum block V6 and all. And Michael had some kind of a device that he put on it that said it looked like him, it was heating up too fast or something, but he was just spooked about it. He didn't want to, give him, you err on the side of caution is what you do. You don't want to say, hey, your car's going to be fine, then it burns up, and next thing you know. So he was just being careful. But Bobby, I didn't know anything about any of it other than the fact that somebody had put a water pump in time belt, and they were worried it was going to overheat. That's all I heard. So Bobby and his son come over there, and they said, they had this, I said, crank it up, and let's, I said, you got the air conditioner on, because I could hear the condenser fan running. I said, turn off the condenser fan. Turn off the air conditioner so the condenser fan will go off. So he turned off the air conditioner, condenser fan went off. I plugged in the wireless vehicle interface, and I put it up on a big screen in big yellow letters so we can watch the temperature from a way off.
You got $10,000 scan tool.
Yeah. He believes in the expensive scan tool. But anyway, so what I did was I pointed at the. I cranked it up, and I said it kept getting warmer and warmer and warmer. What I want to do is I want to see the cooling fan kick on and kick off. Kick on and kick off. And that way, it's managing the heat, right? Well, this one here, the cooling fan never came on. I mean, it got to 22, 27, which is not too terribly hot. I mean, it's not unsafe at that level. But I go to the book, and I said, shut the car off. I went to the book, and the low-speed cooling fan is supposed to come on at 212. It didn't happen at 212. All right, so then I go and I find the relay that drives the low-speed cooling fan. So I unplug the relay. It's got 4 terminals. It's one of them little relays. It's got the terminals at the 4 opposite corners of the relay, and they're actually crisscrossed. The secondary side of that relay that pulls the load is on 2 of the terminals that are catty-cornered from one another, and the other 2, it ain't like that relay. It actually has 4 terminals. And so the kind of relay I'm talking about is like they have on a lot of GM cars. It's got a terminal here, a terminal here, a terminal here, and a terminal here. Now, one of these is the coil, and the other one is, so that way if you plug it in backwards, it doesn't matter. It'll still be just fine. All right, so the long and the short of it was he had power to the coil, and he had power feeding the relay. All right, so then I found the one that was going to the fan. And I hooked my test light up to hot, and I go to the one that's going to the fan, and it lights up, which you'd expect it to do. So I turn the fan by hand to see if it ever goes off. It never does. I unplug the fan to make sure I'm on the right one. I unplug the fan, the light goes off. I plug the fan by hand, it goes back on. I turn it through, I ain't seeing nothing on there. I jump it with a jumper. Boom, fan runs. I said, I know the fan will run. He left some of those springs off of there, like half of them. If he knew the guy, and the guy wanted it to shift a little firmer, which doesn't hurt a doggone thing for it to shift firmer. The clutch bites good and strong, and it's not as prone to slip. And all that, it's for some of your shift kits and all that kind of stuff. You would drill out some of the holes in the separator plate so the oil would go through a little quicker, and you would have to take a weaker spring and put behind your accumulator piston and all that kind of stuff, so you'd have a firmer shift and everything like that. Actually, sometimes you'd make it. We had this. The guy that I worked for at that gas station had this border patrol car, a '69 Plymouth with a 383 with 440 heads on it, had a police interceptor package in it, and that thing had a real high speed rear end in it. And when you got up there, when you'd get on it, and it was built like it was when it was new, that doggone thing would run up to about 50 miles an hour before it would ever hit second gear. But when it hit second gear, you'd hear rubber at about 50 miles an hour. And from about 50 miles an hour on, that thing was a rocket. I mean, whenever you'd punch it, it was gone. And anyway, that thing was pretty amazing. And it had 180,000 miles on it. It didn't burn no oil or nothing. And that was really something to say in the 60s. In the 1960s, if you got 100,000 miles out of a car, you were a fortunate person, because usually 100,000 miles, the car was shot.
Really?
Yep, I'm telling you. In the 1930s, every 10,000 miles, you had to put rings in a car. And, they just barely could make one, work good. Of course, nobody drove all that far in those days like they do now, if you drove a car. But if you took a trip to California and back from Georgia on a Model A, you just had to build a motor when you got back.
It'll take you forever to get there.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just the way it is, you know. And things got better because nowadays, you know, my wife still thinks like it was in the 60s. If you had 100,000 miles on it, the car's gone. Just forget it. It's a junk car now. But I told her, there's a Pontiac out here we got. That when that Pontiac's got a good fuel pump in it, it runs like a sewing machine, and it's got 250,000 miles on it. It don't burn oil or nothing. Don't burn oil, don't overheat, runs normal temperature. I mean, so nowadays, 200,000 to 300,000 miles ain't nothing. I mean, you know, you can do that. And you can get good gas mileage out of a car that's pretty big. These Crown Victorias get 27, 28 miles to the gallon. Big old Crown Vicky.
If you drive it right.
Yeah, if you drive it right. And on the highway, I'm talking about. The Taurus that I used to drive get 33. My wife's Taurus get 33 on the road. If it's in the winter and you ain't running the air, and you're just driving at a steady speed, you get 33 miles a gallon on that thing. Now they have these silly little popcorn cars that look like you stepped on them, you crushed them, they busted the walls out when they're getting 31 miles per gallon. You know, old Buicks and stuff, like the old Buick, you know, like 89, 90 model Buick, the Sabre or something. You'll get 30, 31, 32 miles a gallon out of one of them if you drive it right. Now in town, you're not going to do it quite that well, but you know, even a hybrid vehicle, though, hybrid vehicle does pretty good in town, but on the road it does crappy.
Why?
Because the engine's running more.
Oh, yeah.
You ain't going to drive all that far on your battery. But in town, your takeoffs and your stops, a lot of them are done on the battery, see, which is all that. You know, that Chevy Volt's got a 3-gallon gas tank. And, well, that's in case your battery happens to be dead enough where you can't drive it, you can go a little somewhere.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? It's not a bad idea. I mean, I kind of like that Chevy Volt, really, if they can fix it where it won't catch fire and burn the car down. You know, and they, you know, talking about they got commercials now pushing them. And the Chevy Volt's not a bad car. You know, I mean, it's expensive as all get. You know, you got $45,000 bucks.
How much?
$45,000 bucks. How long is it going to take you to recover that, even if you do save some gas? Now, the power grid. Imagine this. What if we jerked every car out of production, and all of a sudden, bam! Everybody's driving plug-in electric cars. Think we'd overload the power grid?
Yeah.
You know, the generators would be smoking and everything over. All right, let me see here. Let's see. The clutch pack cannot be modified. Leave it to the race car mechanic. He knows that. Huh? All right.
I ain't never messed with automatic transmission, but I mean, I know you can leave.
Yeah, you can do whatever. You can do anything. You can make anything work to get it rigged up right. Some clutches use single-sided friction discs. That's true. The clutch is housed in the transmission or transaxle case.
That's true.
All right. It is. Plate clearance or piston travel measurements can be made must be made after installing the clutch assembly.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's actually before. Whenever you're stacking all them steels and fibers in there, you're supposed to check that clearance with a feeler gauge. But you know what? The transmission guys that I know, and me when I was working on them, you don't never see them get no feeler gauge and check that. You can look at it and tell, you know. I mean, you can ask those guys at Adams about it. Hey, what about checking this? He said, that's nonsense. Don't worry about that. I mean, if it's close enough, you can tell. It's not like it's a critical measurement. They just don't want, you know, but, you know, the engineers, the geeks that put all this stuff together to begin with, they feel like everything's got to be just perfectly measured and all that kind of stuff. With all due respect to the geeks, you know. All right. So the leading cause of joint failure is boot contamination.
That's true.
That's actually false. It's not like a boot contamination issue. The boot gets busted, and then it gets all full of water and dirt and all that kind of junk. But not boot contamination. The boot will rupture. So that's basically the wrong word. GI, AAR, and NTP are variations of the Rizeppa CV joint. That's number 12. That's false. Don't worry about that question too much. We'll move on. Outer CV joints wear at a faster rate than inner CV joints. That is true because they work really hard. They're turning really sharp and all that. The inner one, it can move up, can move a little bit. Now, and it also has to get longer and shorter. Drive shaft's got to get longer and shorter. CV joint's got to get longer and shorter. Why? Because your suspension's moving. And when your suspension moves up and down and you've got a drive axle part hooked to it, you're going to have geometry changes. So you're going to have to, it's got to get longer and shorter. If you got one that doesn't do that, like for a while, Nissan had some Pathfinders or something that drive shaft wouldn't extend, and not like it did, and they were having, you know, vibration issues. And did you know they replaced those entire transmissions with a different kind of transmission? It was weird. And the transmissions they were pulling out, there was nothing wrong with them. And a lot of them they didn't call for, and I wound up with one of them. They just gave it to me, you know, the Nissan dealership. It was a RE401, I think, and it was those transmissions. If you get an RE401 transmission, when I first came here, this lady had an RE401 that was, you know, wasn't pulling. And the reason it wasn't pulling is because the splines in the torque converter were stripped out. And so I started looking around for a transmission just because she said, see how much you get me for another transmission. The cheapest thing I could find, rebuilt, used, or any other kind of way, was $2,000 for that Nissan hardbody pickup.
Oh, it's a hard body. I got one of those transmissions when I had a house.
Yeah, no, not anymore. It's gone now. Somebody picked it up this morning.
Richard, I hate to bother you.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Is there any way we could straighten up a rotor, brake rotor over on your lathe over there?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're supervising, I don't
I'll
want
be over there.
I don't want the students doing it.
Okay.
You got the,
I don't have a key. Bring up
yeah, well, the carpentry and cabinet making is like no other key on the planet.
Is it?
Now, what you're going to do when you stick this in there, you got to jiggle a knob, and then it feels like it's the wrong key, and it'll crunch, and then it'll open.
Okay.
But one of my students brought the key back looking like this.
Okay, well, I'll try not to be.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
you.
you. I know what it's like.
Yeah, treat it gently. All right. All right, and so let's see. Inner and outer CV joints move in the same way.
Both.
They don't, do they? The inner ones plunge, the outer ones. Okay, now you remember ordinarily, you know, on most of your CV axles, when you pop the CV axle out, you know that little stub comes out of the transaxle. On that Saturn and on some of them, I guess some Oldsmobile and stuff, the stub stays up in there, and the CV axle just pops off of it. And then when we put that new seal in there, it comes with a new sealing surface that drives onto that stub. Then you just bump the stub in there with a soft hammer, and you snap it on there. But what was crazy about that Saturn was we got a CV axle that that would actually snap in, look good, everything looked like it was perfect. It would actually work without a stub. It went in there and worked, but it leaked oil. Because apparently that little sealing, and you couldn't look at it and tell, but that little sealing place where the seal went was a little smaller and all that. But I'm thinking that, you know, that probably, after we finally got that car pretty well straightened out, we probably won't see that car anymore. That's a good thing. She did a little all right, so now we got most common CV joint design is the tripod joint. The tripod joint. Rizeppa is the most common one. They used to have on the Renaults. Now imagine this. Oh gosh, this is fun. When we put boots on a lot of them. All right, they had on the Renault a CV joint that was made, and it had 3 fingers that stuck out like this. Right? And then you had the other part of it that went out to your axle that went on there, you know, it had its splines and all that.
Those kind of like the 4-wheel drive on the Bronco.
Vaguely, but this right here was all made in one piece. All right, so how am I going to boot on there? There's a boot on there, but how am I going to get one on there? Is that a pain or what?
Yep, you're not going to do it.
They had a tool, a special tool,
You had to scratch the boot up.
some fastigiated rods. You know what I mean? Something's fastigiated? It's like a TP. The rods are together at the top and they get wider. All right, it had a band on it. This is what it looked like. It was a band, like that, and it would do this. And it had a little sort of round end on it. All right, so you had to take motor oil and dip that boot. If you did anything, use anything but motor oil, it wouldn't work. Put motor oil on that boot, and you had to work it on that thing, and then you had to be moving real fast, and it would stretch that motor up, and it popped down over this axle. That's scary. But, and it was okay, you know, as long as you didn't, and this had to be in a vise. So you basically need to have rags wrapped around your hands, be wearing gloves or something like that, because it's going to go, boom, you go, boom, you bump against the vise, and you know. But what happens is, they make a thing that's pneumatic, costs a couple $100, comes with some special boots, that is like this, and whenever you apply your air, it stretches the boot out. And you can actually replace the boot on a CV axle by just stretching out and putting it on there. If you got a boot that's starting to crack a little bit, but you don't want to replace the whole CV axle, you can stretch those things out, pop them on there, cool it all, get out. Couple $100 for that, and the special boots. It's neat. I mean, because that way you do have to take the CV axle out of the rotor. And anyway, there you go. Or out of the hub. The inner CV, huh?
You never seen one like that?
What's the tool?
No.
Oh yeah, that's only on Renault. Renault does everything crazy.
Oh, what?
Renault, you know
Oh.
what a Renault is?
European company. That European company or something.
Well, they're French.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had Encore, Alliance, they had Eagle Premier. Eagle Premier was an Americanized R25 Renault that was built in Wisconsin up there. But that thing was, those Renault cars, if you drove one of those Renaults when it was really, hey, Kayla, you need to print something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it on? You got your
Make yours up.
thing up?
Sure. She did work study last summer, so she knows the ropes. But anyway, this silly thing, you could drive one of those cars about 70,000, 80,000 miles, but then you had to spend $400 or $500 or $600 on it to get it going again. I mean, it's always happened. You know, and they actually had liners in the engine. What you do is you have to, when you loosen all the head bolts except one, and loosen it a little bit, and you shear the head, and then you bring the head off there, and you can actually pull those liners out. You know, you take the pistons out, you pull the liners out, which was the cylinders, and you put O-rings around them, put them back in there, all that kind of stuff. And my dad used to buy those cars. Huh?
What do you mean by shearing the head?
You had to actually move the head sideways to break it loose, because if you didn't, you'd unseat the liners. And you'd have a whole bunch of extra work. Yeah, when you shear it with your brake roll, that's what you had to do on those. That was just part of it. It was a different way of hearing an engine apart. If you just grab the head and pull it off,
I was looking at your pay thing. Where's the, what you call it?
the cord.
Yeah.
Oh, open that right-hand door and just.
Well, I got both those doors open.
Yeah. Well, it's right there on the front of the computer. Now, trace the cord that goes up to this little black 3 terabyte drive.
That hanging, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's a little shiny box that's sitting there. It's bigger than this, but looks similar to it.
It looks like the speaker. Looks like a speaker.
Yeah, sort of, but it's not a speaker. But don't unplug that one. Unplug the other one.
You might be able to do
And you can do that.
Yeah.
I'll point it out for you.
Last semester too, beginning of the year before the Tanda got here.
Shut the fuck up.
You should have looked up with.
Yeah, she was.
What? What?
Do what? Said do what?
I understand what he's saying.
Camera.
Oh.
She gave me some bad news the other day.
What?
That she had to put down her best sow.
For what?
Her
Her
hogs.
best sow.
She raises hogs. Hey, you laugh at that? Them hogs you sell them hogs? You sell a few of them?
Them hogs are goody.
We got the cash. You know what I'm saying? The big bucks. So much a pound. Whenever they ride out there with that hog and you got all them $100 bills in your pocket, you feel a whole lot better about them hogs. Well, that particular sow was, you know, you kind of like our best sow, the one that produces the most pigs, you know, never that gets sick, you know, shoot them in the head, take them out. She said, she put on Facebook, she said, I'm going to put my best sow down tomorrow morning, you know. All right, so, hey, this is rural Alabama. See, people have hogs and stuff. What was funny was while she was talking to me on the phone this morning, and I grew up with all that, but while she was talking to me on the phone this morning, she was out there feeding the hog. And while she was talking to me, I guess she was feeding the hog because I heard a rooster. I was thinking, wait a minute, was that a ringtone? No, wait a minute. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, nowadays when you hear a rooster, if you're not in the barnyard, you think it's But anyway, cross groove CV joint is commonly used on European vehicles and applications where space is limited.
Is that what you're talking about right there?
Well, the cross groove CV joint, no. This is a cross groove CV joint right here. You remember this one? Do you remember taking this one apart? Everybody's going to have to take one apart CV joint.
We took that apart last time.
Cross groove CV joint.
Yeah.
Cross groove.
No, they're not always used on a European
Cross groove CV joint, kind of what you're talking about right there.
Because
See that? That's what it is.
that's what makes
This right here is a Volkswagen CV joint of a rabbit. That's what it is.
So what makes it plunge?
Huh?
What's what makes it plunge, right?
Major parts. What'd you say?
That's what makes it plunge, right?
Yeah. And actually, no, this is actually the outer one.
Oh.
Yeah. This ain't the plunging one. This one don't plunge, it just turns. I know. But I mean, that's
So
what
it
it
is
is.
only used on European cars?
Yeah, they are. A cross groove CV joint. It doesn't take up as much room. It's skinnier. See those that has a real thin?
Yeah.
All that. And, you know when Volkswagen started using those on their bugs? 1969.
That's too low.
How many of you guys seen a Volkswagen jacked up the rear wheels do this?
Me? I
All
got
right. If you've got a 69 model and you jack it up, they don't do that.
I don't know what you're wrong
Yours is older than a 69 if it's got swing axle on it.
66.
66? Does it say 1300 on the hood?
I
Then it's not a 66.
don't remember it.
Okay.
I haven't looked at it.
Yeah. If you look at the serial number is on the shifter tunnel right in front of that big oval shaped hole under the back seat. The third digit in that serial number will tell you what year model it is. If it's 114, it's a 64. If it's 115, 65. You know it's older than 69 because the axles do this when you raise it up. See that?
What did they use when they done before that?
What are you talking about that?
What did they use for the axles before that?
Actually, though, they actually had axle tubes that were hooked into the rear end.
Oh, okay.
And they would swing, they would come down,
Okay.
and all that. But whenever they started using CV axles, constant velocity joints, they would actually it would swing like that before, and that's how it would get its suspension. See, and they actually on the end of the axle where it went in, it actually had a little. It's hard to describe, but it was the axle was really strong, and it would go. It was like that. It was sort of made that way on the end. And when it went in there, it could bend either way because of the shape of it, you see. And that's what gave you your action and all that. But it went straight out into the hub. And if you don't tighten that big nut on the end of that hub real good, it will, no, what'll happen is it'll wipe out the splines, and then the car won't go. And if you hear a Volkswagen say, oh, like it's trying to go, but it ain't moving, and you pop the hubcap off and you look at that axle and it's just turning, you got to put a brake drum on it. That's all you got to change. Brake drum ain't hard to change. But you better tighten it like 280 foot-pounds is what it goes to. And if you don't tighten it, it's going to wipe them out. It happens all the time.
Have you ever seen somebody put a 2.0 liter Subaru motor on a Volkswagen?
I knew a guy that put a 350 Chevy engine in there.
Oh,
Oh, God.
Yeah, and we would also take they didn't put it in the back of it, though they put a bug engine on. But they actually, what was the big deal back in those days, you take the transmission apart, you put a ring gear on the other side of the pinion so it had 4 reverse gears. And then you put a Corvair engine in it, which is a horizontally opposed air-cooled V6. Horizontally opposed, not V6, but it's horizontally opposed 6-cylinder, pancake engine. Air-cooled Corvair engine. You have to cut a bunch of stuff out, cram that thing up in there. It looked like an aircraft engine or
I
something.
guess that's what they do with the Subaru motor. It's a 2.0 liter turbocharged.
Yeah, you can stick it right in there and it'll scoot, you know that. And but I was driving my little Volkswagen Bug whenever I was down there. This guy named Curtis that I knew, goofy son of a gun. But he could build a Chevrolet. I mean, that guy could build a Chevrolet. He had a really nice. Now you get to make you sick right here. He finds, and this is a long time ago now. You got to remember it's a long time ago. In the backyard of somebody's house, he sees a 65 or 66, whatever. First year they made it, 67 I think, Camaro, 350 SS, just sitting in the backyard. So he buys it for dirt money. They didn't need it anymore, just sitting there. And so he painted it with a brush to protect it from rust and all that kind of stuff. And so he went to work on it. He built an engine for it. Okay, with the transmission. He could do that stuff. He did it at home. I mean, he was really good and all that. So he got all that stuff built up, put it all together. He drove it around. He had his cousins who owned a body shop over to paint that thing